McDonald's is in over 100 countries, but not in Iceland. Starbucks dominates America, but failed in Australia. Ikea struggled in Japan. These aren't random failures. They reveal something deeper about culture, strategy, and globalization. And if you miss it, you lose billions. It's easy to assume that if a business model works in one country, it will work everywhere. But this belief that scale equals success is misleading. The world isn't one market, it's thousands of markets, layered with unique cultures, economies, laws, and behaviors. Global businesses often make the mistake of treating international expansion as a copy and paste operation. Same branding, same product, same strategy. What they forget is that what resonates in Chicago might be met with confusion in Copenhagen, or rejection in Seoul. One of the most cited failures is Walmart in Germany. When Walmart entered Germany in the late 1990s, it believed it could replicate its US playbook. Low prices, big stores, and cheery customer service. But German shoppers didn't like being greeted at the door. They found it invasive. The corporate cheer routines felt bizarre, and Walmart's promise of low prices fell flat because discounters like Aldi and Lidl already dominated the space. Even worse, Walmart misjudged labor laws, had management clashes, and struggled with integration after acquiring local chains. They tried to enforce American HR policies in a country with vastly different labor protections. After almost a decade of underperformance, Walmart pulled out in 2006, eating over $1 billion in losses. It wasn't the product, it was the cultural mismatch and a refusal to localize the experience. Other examples follow the same pattern. Home Depot, the American home improvement giant, failed in China for similar reasons. It assumed DIY culture was global, but in China, people prefer to hire professionals for renovation. The concept of home improvement didn't translate, and Home Depot quietly exited in 2012. Culture is often invisible to companies until it slaps them in the face, and nowhere is this more obvious than Starbucks' spectacular failure in Australia. In 2000, Starbucks began an aggressive expansion, opening more than 80 stores in just a few years. But instead of welcoming the brand, Australians resisted it. Why? Because Australia already had a thriving independent coffee scene. Local cafes offered high-quality espresso, a rich coffeehouse culture, and a sense of community. The idea of grabbing a to-go latte with whipped cream and flavoured syrup didn't appeal. Starbucks' sugary drinks and generic atmosphere felt commercial and alien. It didn't blend with the local rhythm. By 2008, Starbucks closed over 60 stores in Australia. It wasn't the coffee, it was the culture. In markets with strong local identities, global brands have to do more than show up. They have to belong. Another notable case is Dunkin' Donuts in India. It underestimated the nation's preference for savoury over sweet breakfasts. Their American-style sugary menu failed to connect with Indian tastes. Even their coffee offerings couldn't compete with local chai vendors or traditional filter coffee. Despite multiple adaptations, the brand failed to gain traction and had to shut several stores. Not all failures are cultural, some are logistical, and some are both. When Target entered Canada in 2013, expectations were high. Canadians had long visited Target stores across the border. The brand had buzz, excitement, curiosity. But when the stores opened, disappointment set in fast. Supply chain issues meant shelves were often half empty. Prices were higher than expected, and the layout felt off. Customers quickly realized this wasn't the Target they had fallen in love with. The logistics infrastructure wasn't ready. Distribution centers couldn't meet demand. Inventory systems weren't properly localized. Even basic barcode systems caused delays. In just 2 years, Target shut down all 133 stores in Canada, losing $2.5 billion. What went wrong? Everything. Too much speed, poor logistics, misreading consumer expectations. In short, Target expanded before it was ready. And in international business, readiness isn't just about having money, it's about having insight. Uber also experienced operational breakdowns in Southeast Asia. In countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, local competitors like Grab offered better localized features, better driver relationships, and smoother payment systems. Uber eventually sold its regional operations, realizing that global tech dominance doesn't guarantee operational effectiveness everywhere. Sometimes it's not about price or logistics, it's about pride. National identity plays a surprisingly powerful role in whether a foreign brand is embraced or rejected. In France, for instance, McDonald's faced more than just competition. The brand became a symbol of American cultural invasion. Protesters tore down golden arches, activists disrupted openings, and media outlets decried fast food as an attack on French culinary heritage. To survive, McDonald's had to adapt. It introduced localized menu items, emphasized French ingredients, redesigned its restaurants to resemble cafes, and even sourced bread from local bakeries. years. Over time, it evolved into a brand that looked and felt French, at least on the surface. Today, McDonald's is a success in France, but only because it stopped trying to sell an American experience. Instead, it sold a French one under an American name. This pattern extends elsewhere. In South Korea, Walmart and Carrefour both failed, partly because they didn't appreciate the strength of local pride and shopping habits. Koreans prefer open markets, late-night shopping, and direct interaction with vendors, something foreign hypermarkets struggle to replicate. Brands that underestimate national sentiment often find themselves facing resistance, not because of what they sell, but because of what they symbolize. Even when products are great and operations run smoothly, a brand can still fail through messaging. Marketing is not just about translation, it's about resonance. And when messaging misses the mark, the fallout can be immediate and lasting. Pepsi's infamous slogan in China, "Come alive with the Pepsi generation," was mistranslated to mean Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the dead. Ford's campaign for quality vehicles in Belgium translated into "Every car has a high-quality corpse." HSBC's global campaign, "Assume Nothing," was translated in many markets as "Do Nothing," prompting a $10 million rebranding effort. These failures go beyond language. They show a lack of cultural fluency. In Japan, subtlety and humility are prized in advertising. Loud, aggressive pitches that work in the US can feel abrasive or disrespectful. In the Middle East, imagery involving uncovered women or alcohol can instantly doom a campaign. In Brazil, humor works. In Germany, precision does. Brands that treat the world as a single cultural space often end up becoming global cautionary tales. Economics matter, but it's not just about affordability, it's about perception. When Best Buy entered the UK, it found itself in a retail landscape already dominated by online players like Amazon and local electronics chains with aggressive discounting strategies. Best Buy's value proposition, big stores and hands-on service, simply didn't resonate in a market that had moved on. Consumers weren't interested in browsing aisles. They were clicking buttons. In emerging markets, pricing is even more sensitive. Brands that fail to adapt to local income levels price themselves out. Even luxury brands face this tension. Do they lower prices and lose exclusivity, or stay expensive and lose market share? In Brazil, Apple products can cost up to twice their US price due to import taxes. That's not a brand decision, but it affects brand success. In India, global fashion brands like Gap and Forever 21 have struggled to compete with fast, affordable local options. Pricing isn't just math, it's psychology. A product must not only be affordable, it must feel worth it, and that feeling varies widely from country to country. Finally, politics can make or break a brand. In India, foreign direct investment in retail is tightly regulated. Walmart can't open stores freely, it must partner with local firms. In China, tech giants like Google, Facebook and Twitter remain blocked due to censorship laws and national security concerns. In Russia, after the Ukraine invasion in 2022, many Western brands exited the market in protest. Their stores and IP were then seized or rebranded by local entities. Operating internationally means navigating not just customer needs, but government rules. These rules can change quickly and unpredictably. Sanctions, tariffs, taxes, and censorship can destroy a business model overnight. Even well-liked brands are vulnerable. A tweet, a trade war, or a regulatory shift can turn a top-performing market into a liability. That's why companies with strong local partnerships and political risk strategies tend to last longer. For every failure, there's a brand that got it right. These companies didn't just expand, they adapted. KFC in China succeeded because it became a Chinese restaurant. It added congee, localized snacks, and changed store formats to match local dining preferences. It didn't teach customers to love American chicken, it gave them chicken they already loved. McDonald's in India introduced the Makaloo Tikki burger, made with potatoes and spices familiar to Indian palates. No beef, no pork. It respected religious customs and culinary tastes. Unilever reformulates soaps, shampoos, and detergents based on water quality and climate in each market. It's not just a branding choice, it's a functional necessity. These brands listen, they localize, and as a result they thrive. So why do global brands fail in some countries? Because they treat the world as one market, one customer, one playbook. But the truth is, the world is made of billions of different people with unique values, needs, habits, and hopes. Brands that succeed understand this. They don't just sell products, they learn, they adapt, they fit in. Because going global isn't about being big, it's about being relevant, and relevance is always local.